Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 11th episode on Showcase Studio of In Conversations. Today, our special guest is none other than the amazing young violinist called the new king of the violin, Ambi Subramaniam. I'm really not going to say anything more about him because our most amazing host, Narendra Kusnur, is going to talk a lot about him, to him, and share a lot more with us. But I just want to say that I heard Ambi a few years ago, and he'd come to perform with his sister Bindu, and it was such a beautiful performance. And other than his good looks, which I think all the young girls in the festival were totally swooned by, but I mean, his violin playing was another level. And he has really taken forward the lineage of his father, of his family traditions beautifully, and taken the violin across its narrow confines and without actually diluting the strength of that instrument. So we've been fortunate in our first 10 episodes to have had artists who've stayed pure to their art forms and have shared a lot with us about the different art forms. We have had a lot of learning as we have gone along, and we're looking forward to a lot more. So, without further delay, I'm going to welcome our guest for today onto the stage, Amri Subramaniam.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Ambi. Thank you so much for coming on to Showcase Studio. It's such an honor, also a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. And thank you ever so much. And we're really excited and looking forward to today's episode to hear a lot more about the violin and actually to learn a lot about the violin. So, why don't we start? I don't want to keep talking because I want to hear you. And why don't we start with like a small one of your favorite pieces? And let's start the show with that. And then, of course, I'm going to bring up our host for this evening, who is the most amazing Narendra Kusnur. And our regular visitors with Showcase Studio are familiar with him. And like I say, the encyclopedia Narendra Kusnur. So we'll bring him on and over to you for your first piece. And I'm going to exit the stage.
Great. I thought it'll be nice to play a little bit of Raga Kalyani, which is similar to Rag Yaman in the Hindustani tradition. It's one of my favorite rags, and you can take it from there.
Lovely. Look forward to this. Thank you so much, Ambi, once again.
Wow. Hello, Ambi, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Showcase Studios in Conversation series. And very nice to have you here, Ambi. And
Thank you so much. It's such a
yeah,
pleasure.
I know. We've been interacting with each other in different levels, and but this is wonderful. Uh, well, that's an instrument that you've been holding practically all your life, right? So we'll begin just to tell the viewers that we'll be talking about the Indian violin primarily, the classical violin, and a bit of fusion. But basically, we'll start with Carnatic music, a little bit of Hindustani music. We'll talk about. Then we'll talk about Western styles like Western classical and jazz, and then a little bit of fusion. So these are what we plan over the next 45, 50 minutes to talk. And of course, Ambi will be demonstrating a lot and playing uh, this thing. So if you could just tell us about violin in Carnatic music, how it came into being. It is very popular, and just and explain a bit about different things, the gripping and the bowing and various things that you'd like to talk about the violin.
Sure, sure. So actually, this is kind of a very hotly contested kind of thing when we talk about the origin of the violin, because a lot of people in India also believe that initially we had string bowed instruments.
Hmm.
So I mean, if you look at temple sculptures and all of that, and there have been so many violin-like instruments all around the world. So a lot of people think that this stringed instrument went to the west through kind
Hmm.
of the Silk Route and through
Hmm.
other
Hmm.
things that came back as the modern violin.
Okay.
Uh, but the violin, as it is, the modern violin, uh, came to India during the 18th century
Hmm.
through Baluswami Dikshidhar, who was
Yeah. Hmm.
a great musician himself, and he was the brother of Muthuswami Dikshidhar,
Hmm.
one of the most important
The
composers.
first ones, yeah. Hmm.
So, as story goes, he saw um, this British band playing at that time
Hmm.
in Madras, and immediately after seeing the violin, he thought, okay, fine, this would be a perfect accompanying instrument to the voice.
Okay.
I think at that time they were also trying out other instruments like the veena and the
Hmm.
flute
Hmm.
and all of that. But also the violin had one like major advantage
Hmm.
was that also the volume is similar to a voice,
Okay.
because the veena was too soft and the flute was too loud.
Okay.
And I think at that time also natural acoustics made
Hmm.
such a big
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah.
And apart from that, of course, you can sustain a note for a very long time.
Okay.
There are a lot of things that you can do with the violin.
Hmm.
Since there are no frets, you can do any type of slide.
Hmm.
Uh, so, so slowly it became the most important accompanying instrument at that time.
Okay. Hmm.
Then, uh, slowly, these amazing violinists would
Hmm.
also once in a while play a solo,
Hmm.
uh, that kind of thing. Uh, I think my grandfather was very instrumental,
Yeah.
and my father, of course,
Hmm.
of making it a complete solo instrument.
Hmm.
Because I think at that time, uh, I think it was pretty amazing. My grandfather, he had um, a kind of vision that seems very common now, but
Hmm.
was certainly not the case then.
Hmm.
So I remember my father saying that a
Hmm.
lot of people would say that would tell him that he should not listen to any other style of music.
Okay.
Like if you listen to Western music or if you listen to some other style of music, your ear will get
Yeah.
spoiled.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but my grandfather used to send them to go listen to all these different styles. My dad would say, there was this in Chennai. They used to play uh, these Western classical music recordings in
Okay.
one theater. So he
Okay.
used to send him to those places, and it was there he saw Jascha Heifetz,
Hmm. Yeah.
his my dad's favorite violinist now,
Okay.
uh, playing Bach, and then
Okay.
so so he saw that, and then my grandfather would tell him, okay, fine, if you're playing Carnatic music or if you're going outside, you need to make sure that you're playing at the same level that is being played everywhere else in the world on a technical level. So, of course, they were incredible musicians, um, incredible violinists, but due to the scene, I think also uh, technique wasn't something that was developed as much. Uh, I think it was also it had to do with necessity. So if you're only
Okay.
playing with a singer or with somebody else, then you develop as much as you need to. So if
Okay.
and at that time my father would also say, as an accompanist, you always have to make sure you never kind of cross that line and overshadow
Yeah,
the
the main.
singer or whoever you're playing with. So as a result, you end up playing only like 1.5 octaves. You
Okay.
don't have to play very fast because you can play as fast as somebody can sing. So all of those things were big factors. And
Okay.
also in Carnatic music, um, most like almost all the compositions are vocal compositions.
Yeah.
So, so
Could you
because of,
demonstrate different kinds of compositions for us? Like, I mean, a few varieties.
yeah,
You can
absolutely.
demonstrate it. Yeah.
So there are a couple of important compositional forms that you will see in a concert.
Yeah.
One probably the most popular format is the kriti, where you have one composition set to a particular rag and tal, and so you improvise in the same raga before that, which is your alap. Then you play the composition, and then there's an improvisation section
Okay.
with rhythm called the swara kalpana.
Mm.
So that is a very important type of composition. Most concerts you'll see many kritis being performed. There is also a very important form called a varnam.
Mm.
A varnam is actually uh, a kind of technically challenging piece, and it's always the first composition in a Carnatic concert.
Correct.
So it's kind of interesting because it's also a very good warm up
Mm.
because you have to use uh, there's a lot of akar normally when you're singing or when you're playing. There's a lot of repeated notes that you do with your left hand. So as a result, it's a great piece to kind of get you warmed up and ready.
Yeah.
And one very nice thing about it also is it teaches you improvisation in a structured way. So the
Mm.
second, there are typically two halves, and the
Mm.
second half you have one line,
Mm.
and then you have these kind of written improvisations. So you have like a slow improvisation getting faster and getting longer. So
Okay.
that kind of mimics how
Mm.
you would improvise later on. So
Okay.
you have these great composers kind of giving you written improvisation, showing you what you can do with these different ragas. So that's a beautiful compositional form.
Mm. Mm.
Then, of course, there is also a ragam tanam pallavi,
Anyway, yeah.
which is probably your longest
Mm.
piece in a concert.
Mm.
And so your ragam is similar to your alap. So if you were to have something similar to the Hindustani tradition, it would be similar to Alap Jod Jala.
Yeah.
And so what's nice is like there it really tests you because you're playing for like an hour, but
Okay.
you have only one line that's actually written.
Okay.
And there are a couple of other smaller forms
Mm.
which are kind of fun pieces to do.
Mm.
One type of piece that I really love is the Tilana.
Tilana.
So that is very it's a kind of fun and dance
Okay.
driven position. So
Okay. Could
if,
you play us the Tilana now and
sure,
demonstrate?
sure. So this is a piece normally you'll find is very rhythmic
Mm.
because it's meant to be played for dance.
Mm.
So I'll just play maybe a short section
Yeah.
of a Tilana that I wrote recently.
Mm.
Uh,
Wow. Okay, now that we played it, Telana, if you could also just, since you've playing the violin, showing it to us, like you can also show the different parts of the violin and what uses they are, how the fretboard is used. Yeah.
Sure. So I actually have two violins here.
Okay.
Um, so this is a violin that I've been playing with for a while. This is actually a five-string violin.
Hmm.
So I just want to show another one here,
Hmm.
so you see the difference. So this is a
Yeah.
four-string, which
Okay.
is kind of the normal violin, the
Hmm.
standard violin. So it has four strings: G, D, A, E. So this is a typical Western tuning that
Okay.
that you'll see, and that's used in most parts of the world. So for the Indian violin, we've kind of added
Hmm.
a lower string, which is actually your viola string. So
Hmm.
you have four violin strings, and the fifth one is a viola string. And
Yeah.
then you have two ways to tune the violin.
Hmm.
So one is for major adjustments in pitch,
Hmm.
and one is for small adjustments in pitch. And they're held up by the bridge here.
Hmm.
So one important thing in the violin is a lot of it is based on muscle memory
Hmm.
because there are no frets.
Hmm.
So that's why I think it takes a bit of practice to get.
Yeah.
I think when you're learning the violin, the first 6 months are the hardest
Hmm.
to get a nice tone,
Hmm.
to get all of that. But then once
Okay.
you cross the first 6 months, it becomes
Hmm.
a lot more fun.
Okay.
And then the sound comes through these. Uh, they're called F poles,
Okay. Yeah.
and yeah. So these strings now are made of metal.
Hmm.
Steel. Sometimes the lower strings are made of silver. You also have some of these gold-plated strings. Um, in the earlier times, they were made out of sheep intestine.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting when you listen to older recordings, or sometimes you have these recreations where they play older music with all of these uh, different strings, and they use the bow, which is slightly
Yeah.
different. Uh, so it sounds very different from uh,
Hmm.
what you play with a modern day violin. It's quite
Okay.
fascinating.
Okay. There is also a difference in the way you hold a violin in different genres, no? If you can.
Yes, yes. So typically, um, so I use this, which is called shoulder rest.
Hmm.
So I put that here, and then typically when we're playing, say, Western classical
Hmm.
or fusion or
Hmm.
a lot of those styles, then you hold it up this way, and
Hmm.
the idea is that you want your roughly your nose should be in line
Okay.
with your scroll.
Okay.
That's kind of a good indicator.
Hmm.
uh, in the Carnatic tradition, in the Hindustani tradition, we sit down and play, of course.
Yeah.
There, uh, so it's quite interesting because it makes a little, it makes quite a bit of difference to the projection of sound.
Okay.
When you're playing this way, also generally when we're playing
Hmm.
Western classical,
Hmm.
it's tuned a bit higher.
Okay.
So you get a lot of projection, and they use a lot of vibrato, which is
Hmm.
essentially meant to increase
Hmm.
projection.
Okay.
But when we play in the Indian style, since we're putting the scroll on our foot, a
Hmm.
lot of times a lot of the vibrations are kind of taken away by your foot and by your body. Uh, Plus, it's tuned a little lower, so
Okay.
that can make a big difference with projection. Also, in the Arabic tradition, generally they play it this way,
Okay.
where they rest where they rest the
Yeah.
violin on their left leg.
Ah,
They play somewhat similar to a cello.
okay. Yeah. In fact, there's a question out here: is that what is a viola string tuned into the to a five-string violin? You can
So
see that question.
yeah, that's a very nice question. So typically, this is a viola C string, which is the lowest viola C. But in the Carnatic tradition, so if you see say uh, a jazz violinist or
Hmm.
a country violinist playing a five-string violin, that lowest will be a C string. But in the Indian tradition, we tune it to sa pa sa pa sa. So it depends on what sa you choose to have. So if you want your tonic to be D, as I'm having now, then this is D A D A D.
Okay.
But in the Western tradition, probably it'll be C G D A E.
Okay. You said the first 6 months are really tough when it comes to learning up. So when you also teach a lot, you have this institute. So when a student is new, what do you focus on in the first 6 months? Like, I mean, how do you groom the person as to get the right tone and the right
Yeah,
projection?
I think it's very important to make the first 6 months fun, because that kind of shapes everything else with your learning. So actually, through our school, we kind of devised the SAPA method for learning the violin, where we try to make it fun, and you're learning a lot of small pieces uh, that that. If a child is learning, they're kind of learning these small pieces continuously, but
Hmm.
each piece is kind of designed to work on a particular technique.
Okay.
So for example, uh, let's see. So there's this one piece. Uh, so this is a very small piece that they're kind of learning. But
Hmm.
the idea with that is,
Hmm.
as a teacher, we're using those pieces to teach technique. So the whole
Okay.
idea of that piece is to make sure that when you're playing, you don't take your first finger off, and
Okay.
you're putting your first finger on both strings. So
Okay.
when I'm playing this, trying to make sure that they play both notes without lifting the finger.
Okay.
So, and we use some tapes and a couple of different things like that. So they're using different for each piece. They're using different parts of the bow. They're
Okay.
using different fingers, and so I think it's important to make sure that first experience is very positive, because
Okay.
once you enjoy the instrument, then
Hmm.
you will start enjoying the rigor of that.
Okay. Okay. We'll go a few levels ahead now after teaching. Like the person has learned the basics of the violin as a solo instrument, but in Carnatic music, the rhythm plays a very important role. So, how does that develop in a musician?
So I think, yeah, that's very important, and so that is something also we focus on right at the beginning.
Hmm.
So I think it's important. So everybody always, you learn with the tanpura uh, from the time you start. I think it's all equally important that you start with the metronome right at the beginning. So when you have the metronome, so we tell them, uh, tanpura is for pitch, this is for rhythm, and I think once it becomes a part of you, then whatever you're playing, you start feeling that internal beat. So because initially, uh, you'll have to a lot of times you're counting rhythms, you're counting in your head, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But then slowly that needs to become an internal thing where you
Okay.
kind of get a feeling of the space.
Okay.
So then once you kind of feel that space inside, then it becomes much easier to kind of try different things, and knowing that there's a high likelihood of you coming back on the beat.
Okay. Okay, from Karnataka, we now move on to Hindustani violin. So, if you could just broadly talk about what makes the style of Hindustani special, what are the commonalities, what are the differences between the two forms?
Sure. So a big caveat here is that I'm not at all a Hindustani expert, but of course I love the tradition. I love the music, and so many brilliant musicians there. Uh, one so one thing I've noticed, uh, because a lot of times if I'm playing with my mom or if I'm playing with some other musicians, it's important to kind of imbibe the style a little bit. So I think I've tried to imbibe the style a little bit, but being very clear that I don't know enough of the music to kind of uh, um, to play Hindustani music as is. But I think one major kind of stylistic difference is the way we use the slides and ornamentation. So generally, what I kind of find is when we're playing Carnatic music, the slides are a bit faster, and uh, so you'll kind of have a lot of passages where um, you'll have fast and intricate slides that are going throughout. So, for example, if you're taking a very popular kind of raga in Carnatic music called Todi, which is slightly different from the Hindustani Todi. Uh, so, in a lot of these kind of ragas, you use a lot of intricate slides. And there's one very special kind of slide that is there in Carnatic music. Uh, so this particular gamaka is is called the Kampita gamaka, where essentially instead of playing one note, you're playing around the note. So
Okay.
in this, sometimes if you look at this knee, a lot of times in a lot of ragas, you're not actually playing, but you're playing. So if you hear somebody singing, they'll be singing "ee," but they're actually not if you're asking them where that note is, it's somewhere in between this line.
Okay.
So a lot of those things are very distinctive to the Carnatic style.
Okay.
Uh, I think in comparatively in a lot of the Hindustani music, there are a lot more plain notes which are used, which is used to beautiful effect. So sometimes you'll have the ornamentation a little slower and possibly a little heavier.
Okay.
So from a violinist kind of point of view, that would mean that maybe I'm digging my fingers into the string just a little more to get a little bit more of that weight. Because when you're using a slide a little slower, to kind of counter that, you use a little more weight into that.
Okay. Okay. Now, before we uh, talk about Western music, there's a lot to discuss on Western music, and one question on Western music has already come in, but we'll answer that later. Basically, I mean, Dr. L. Subramaniam, he's interacted with a lot of international artists, like right from Yehudi Menuhin and Stefan Grappelli and Jean-Lo Ponty, Herbie Hancock, Joe Sample, George Duke. I mean, so many. And So this is something you've been exposed to right from the beginning. Now, he what is the I mean, you he plays three roles, I think, in your this thing. One is he's a father, he's a guru, and he's an internationally known violinist, a star in his field. So how do you look at all these three roles, and could you tell the influence, how much you, what all you learned from him, how did you imbibe things, and how did he guide you? If you could just briefly talk about that, and plus, of course, the lineage of your grandfather V. Lakshmi Narayan.
Right. So I think one amazing thing that my father kind of gave all of us was that kind of exposure to great artists. I think from a very young age, um, we kind of saw a lot of amazing things that are out there, and you kind of see all these amazing musicians. And of course, I mean, on the violinist and the guru side of things, technically and skill wise, there are so many things that I've learned from him. But also, you kind of see growing up all of these different artists that you're meeting, uh, their off stage persona. And I think that was very powerful for us to see, because sometimes, you see you see these amazing artists on stage, being stars, and I think sometimes it can be very different from the lives that they actually lead. So you see, uh, you kind of see the glamour of being a musician,
Mm,
where you play well, everybody comes to you at the end of a concert,
mm.
you feel good. So a lot of times most people see that, but
Okay.
I think also one thing I was very lucky to see was kind of sacrifices and everything else that these musicians kind of made in order to kind of get through. So
Mm.
I remember there was this absolutely incredible musician that we know. His name is Øystein Badsvik. So
Okay.
he's a Norwegian tuba player,
Okay.
and he was the first tuba soloist in the world. Because typically, the tuba is like way back
Mm.
in
Yeah.
the orchestra.
Yeah.
Uh, Typically in a symphony orchestra,
Mm.
score also there are 20 lines
Mm.
that the conductor has to read, and a
Mm.
tuba player doesn't even get his own line. He gets half
Yeah.
a line. so so I was just kind of so we were really fortunate to kind of be able to meet him and perform with him, and we were just uh, before the show we were just having dinner and we were just talking with all the rest of the team, and he was just telling me about his struggle,
Mm.
and he was saying, uh, I was trying to play tuba well, and then I decided that, you know, no matter what happens, I want to become a soloist.
Mm.
So, uh, so he said, so I said, okay, that's incredible. He's like, yeah. So I got up one day, and then I told the orchestral manager, and I told everyone, I want to do this as a solo instrument. They're like, good for you. And then that's it. They didn't pick up his phone after that. The same guys who he used to perform with, nobody gave him a slot, because he was like, who will ask, who will see a tuba soloist? So then he was saying, all my friends who are non musicians, they used to work from 9 to 5. Uh, so I decided that I would work also like that. So every morning from he would start at 9 and finish practice till 5.
Mm.
And then he was saying, after a while, since I wasn't getting concerts, I had to make sure that I had to sustain myself. So he said for 2 years he was just eating potato leek soup,
Mm.
because that was the cheapest thing for him, uh, to be able to sustain his dream. And I was totally shocked when I heard all of this, because now I have met him at a point where he's this huge star in his life, and whatever he wants people are ready to give him. But you see that kind of, you listen to these stories, you see that struggle, I also remember once at the NCPA when we had the incredible Ernie Watts, who's
Hmm.
really,
Saxo.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he had just come from the US, and our sound check and rehearsal went a little longer than usual. Um, so it finished at around 3:30, and we were all very tired because we just played the previous day and we were coming. So we were like, okay, fine, we'll quickly go eat something, rest, so we'll be fresh for the concert. He was like, I was like, okay, come, let's go. He's like, no, 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 I need to practice my scales. I got some peanuts from the room. I'll practice here until the concert's over. I was totally blown away because he was also, by that time, he was already absolute legend in his field.
Yeah.
You see so many things that you wouldn't normally see as an audience member.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, we'll now, before we get on to Western classical and fusion, we'd like to, Western classical violin has played a very important role. I mean, you have these big strings and sections and all that, but also right from the time of the Baroque era, like we had Vivaldi, Bach, Handel, violin played at this thing. So if you could play some of that.
Sure, sure. So I've actually uh, I'm releasing a Vivaldi piece that's coming out tomorrow.
Okay, wow.
But I'll play a little bit
I
of
didn't know
Bach.
anything. Huh? I didn't know that. But yeah. Okay. You're playing Bach.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Which one?
So I'll play a piece from his Partita number 2.
Okay. Fine. Wow. So again, like that brings us to how I mean, you've been exposed to a lot of Western classical music and jazz music, which you talked about a bit. And so, how do you? When you listen to both these genres, you obviously make comparisons and with your own style and what you can adapt, how you can interact with musicians and all. So, how does that process work?
So that's a very interesting question because maybe I can talk a little bit about kind of how I approached my first album, my Carnatic album. So I think at that point, I wasn't thinking about any of these things. I kind of played the album, and I was reasonably happy with the way it came out. And uh, I think always once it's out, you kind of pick holes in it. But then I realized that there's so many things. Sometimes uh, I learned this thing that is very powerful when somebody told me, it's not that people like making mistakes. It's that most people don't hear the mistakes that they're making. So, I kind of went on this journey on a violinistic front, to kind of hear more mistakes that I was making. So I would listen to one track of my album, and then immediately I would listen to a great violinist from a totally different style of music. So to kind of see from a violinistic standpoint what they are doing better that I'm not doing, or I'm not able to kind of hear. Uh, I found that very useful, because then you're taking the piece out of the equation, and you're just focusing on the emotion, you're focusing on your bow control, you're focusing on your shifting, you're focusing on the musical line. So, and I think that's an important thing to do, uh, understanding that most uh, most audiences uh, may not know as much about that particular style. So if
Okay.
you're, and I think it's important that that shouldn't be a factor. So whether you're playing in a music academy in Chennai, or you're playing in a, say, in a small church in Iceland, where they know absolutely they don't know much about the style, it should still move them in the same way. So so for me, I kind of went on that journey at that time, uh, and then I was listening. I would listen to this great violinist, and like, okay, here in this passage, the way his musical line is evolving, I wasn't able to do that in my piece. Or or if you just look at the tone he's getting when he's pushing. For me, I'm not able to get that. That same tone. So I started looking at it from those aspects, and then I think then you're able to kind of assimilate so many different things from different styles without changing the style that you want to play.
Okay. Okay. Uh, One of the famous pieces of Dr. Subramaniam, which everybody plays, is Conversations, that whole album. So if you could just play something from there, any tune,
Sure.
your choice.
Okay. Uh,
Wow. Okay. And the other fusion projects that you've also been involved with is Subramania and their Saddam project. So a little bit about those, if you can talk about, and how exactly do you want to make it sound different from a lot of fusion work that is happening?
well, I think both of them have been passion projects. Subramania started for Bindu and I in 2013. And I think at that point, it was kind of a way for us to bring our different voices together, musically speaking, because till then I had done uh, predominantly either Carnatic, or if it's if it was fusion, it was with my dad. If it was more in the commercial space, it was with my mom. But I hadn't written much as a composer, or any of that. And my sister till then had done a lot of singer songwriter kind of pop.
Okay.
So so I think at that time it was a kind of safe space for us to kind of try and experiment with different things. Uh, to the point where sometimes we were discussing uh, like one piece. Uh, like I was heavily influenced by the Gypsy Hungarian violin, so I wrote a piece that brought Indian elements, but was heavily influenced by that. Then we had the chance to collaborate with this incredible musician from Senegal. So then we kind of worked to study his style of music, and we made a piece around that. Then we had the chance to collaborate with this amazing flamenco guitarist from Spain. So we try to make a piece around that. So
Okay.
I think through the years, although we've tried these different things, we've tried to make sure that every piece sounds like a Subramania piece and sounds
Okay.
like.
Could you just play one of those the gypsy piece or something like just a little bit, just to give us a flavor?
Sure. So this musician, incredible musician, he did a lot of things with plucking the strings.
Okay.
So we started.
Pizzicato.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. That term pizzicato has always fascinated me. How did it come about?
It's a very good question that I don't have the answer to.
Anyway, okay. Basically it's plucking strings. The plucking.
Yeah. So actually, that was a piece that we did because I was totally fascinated by this incredible musician that we played with. So that's how we started the piece, and then we brought in Indian elements. We brought in konakol,
Okay.
uh, and yeah. So those are like very. I think it was a very interesting time
Okay.
um, in my life. Even I mean when we were starting Subramania, because now for better or worse, everything you do has is assigned a number, whether it's number of views, number of likes, number everything, and how much ever you try to ignore them, you can only do it to a certain extent. Uh,
Okay.
so I think this was done at a time where you're just making music because things fascinate you.
Okay.
And I think that that's something we've tried to hold on to. So despite, I mean, sometimes you do projects that really mean a lot to you, and you think that you're really doing something musically nice that may not get the most viewership, and then you do something totally random that gets that everyone is talking about. So it becomes. I think it's important to kind of uh, set all of that aside and just try to make things that make you happy.
Okay. Fine. Okay, we had just have about 10 minutes or so, and we'll obviously be listening to a little bit of music from you. But before I this thing, there are two questions. One is coming from Parag Kamani, and one is my own question. So Parag asks, is there a difference between a violin and a fiddle, and or manner styles in which they are played? So if you can.
So from an instrument point of view, it's the same thing. They just call it different things. So the violin and fiddle are the same, but the way they play it is different. So generally, when you're talking about the fiddle in the West, they generally mean folk styles
Okay.
or
Country.
these kind of, yeah. So you have either your Scottish style or um,
Celtic.
your country
Yeah.
Celtic, all of these styles. So in I remember reading this quote by this famous fiddler saying that the violin and the fiddle are the same, except that the fiddle is more fun.
Okay. Okay, fine. There's another question from Parag as to which have been your favorite collaborations, and who do you want to collaborate it with and why?
Uh, so that's a very hard thing to say. Like which has been my favorite collaboration. I think I've been really fortunate to play with some really incredible musicians and learn a lot from them. Um, one was the gypsy violinist that I was mentioning, Robbie Lakatos. There has been another incredible uh, flute player that I had the opportunity to play with, Jorge Pardo, who is absolute legend. He's kind of made the flute where it is in the Spanish flamenco tradition. Um, been a number of incredible musicians, but I would say that um, I kind of look for to collaborate with people where I can learn a lot from. So that's always been kind of a driving force, uh, and that doesn't always mean that they should be older or more accomplished than I am. So I think I've had equal amount of fun. Recently, I think a couple of months ago, I played with one of our Sapa students who's a 10-year-old Mridangam player.
Okay.
Absolutely phenomenal talent. I had so much fun in that process. So I think it's fun to play with these different musicians at different stages of their career, from different genres. You learn so much through perspectives.
Yeah. Fine. Okay. And my question was, you play Carnatic, you play Western classical, you play fusion. Does it require a change in mindset every time you toggle around between these things, and to get out the best effect, or what? Like?
I would say it requires a different mindset, but I think I was lucky since I started fairly early. Uh, that wasn't really too much of a factor, but I think it's important to understand the stylistic elements of each. Uh, so and I would even put playing say a Bollywood song in that category, because
Okay.
sometimes
Yeah.
um, just like a lot of classical musicians, when I initially when I started playing with my mom, I was like, okay, fine, I'm a classical musician, so sure, I mean the music is great, but I don't think it'll be very difficult for me,
Okay.
because on a technical thing, uh, it shouldn't be too hard. But then I realized that the way you play, the style, the way you use your bow, everything is completely different, and it's very very different to kind of tell a story in an hour through a ragam tandem pallavi, and
Yeah.
to tell a story in a 3-minute song.
Sounds. Yeah.
So it was fascinating for me to kind of understand. Like for me now that I've been doing it for a number of years, I find it a little easier to make that switch. But there are a lot of things that you have to kind of think about when you're playing these different styles.
Okay. And how much has your mom, I mean, been part of you in terms of advising you and telling you, and I
A
mean, the
lot,
technical
actually.
part you would have learned from Dr. Subramaniam, but in terms of how you should go about with your work, and that's the feel that you should get and all that.
Yeah, I've learned so much from her, and the funny thing is, sometimes she doesn't realize what a legend she is. So sometimes she'll say, I haven't learned properly, or I haven't done this. So what will like? Then I look at her and like, are you serious? But there's so many things. But what I really love is the, again, difference in perspective. Because if I were to play, if my father were to comment on something, he will comment on certain things. He may talk about some technical things, or about the tone, or about some of those things, my mom will talk about some completely different things, many of which, like, would never occur to me until she said it.
Okay, wow. Okay, Ambi, that was really a fantastic interview and so many insights we got to know about the violin and about you and about the family and everything, a lot of things about music and the things. So thank you so much. And before uh, you leave, we'll listen to one more piece from you, any piece of your choice, whatever you would like to play. And wonderful to have you here. Nani will be back after you play the piece to generally uh, to thanks for the Thanksgiving and talking to you about different comments that have come. So all
Great.
yours now.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's always such a pleasure speaking with you, and we go back for so many years,
I
and
know.
it's always really nice.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd like to maybe finish with um, Ganapati Bhajan. A
Okay.
very simple piece, but it's a piece very close to my heart.
Hmm. Wow. Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
This was so beautiful, Ambi. I don't want this to stop. This was lovely. Thank you so much. This was
Thank
such a
you. Thank
beautiful it and so many insights, so much learning. Honestly, really fascinated. In fact, we loved the session when Sunita Bhuya, in fact, I think she's with us also in the audience, and she showcased the versatility of the violin and how beautifully she played different aspects of the violin, different moods on the violin. And today you taught us so much more about the violin itself. And honestly, like I've just been sitting with my jaw drop situation because some of the things that you all brought up were I mean, you don't find that information on Google, and that's exactly what Showcase Studio in Conversations is trying to achieve. I think it was just beautiful, Naren, how nicely you brought out such important parts of certain important aspects of the violin. And
Thank you.
Ambi explained. For once, Ambi said he didn't know something, so that was very funny. But so I will share a few comments over here that are coming in, and Usha ji has been with us for many shows, one of our regular viewers. And thank you for the wonderful session. Love to hear about your efforts of being a self-critique, self-assessment process to improve. That itself speaks volumes about you as an artist.
Oh, thank you so much.
And Ambi, there are loads and loads of really, really excellent compliments your way. And of course, I'm going to send you screenshots of all these comments, right? But it was a beautiful session, and every single piece. And what really fascinated me was the piece that you played about the gypsy thing. I mean, I've actually honestly never seen a violin being played like that. So I thought that was like really, really fascinating. So, of course, I'm going to be extra greedy. Maybe the audience may want to kill me because we've like already, as always, spent over 15 minutes of our time. But I'm going to be greedy and ask you to play another one small piece which you feel is closest to you when it comes to like a piece which you really like stand up for. Like, I mean, recently you played a beautiful composition which was yours. I think you had Shweta Mohan as the vocal artist. That was such a beautiful piece. But
Oh,
my call is not that you play that particular piece. It's totally your call. Something which I don't know. I just don't want this thing to stop. So maybe I'm just extending it. But just a small thing which is like something that's your favorite, really.
sure.
It could be any of your mom's pieces, or like that's the only space you haven't demonstrated also. Like when you've had to play commercial music, like we've spoken so much about classical, but when you've had to play commercial music, how does it come in? Like when you have to play a Bollywood song, it's really not the easiest, like you said. It's really
Right.
true. It's we can't take Bollywood music for granted at all. It's very, very tough. Each composition has so much. So
Sure.
let's maybe
Maybe.
hear something.
Yeah. Sure. Maybe I'll play a bit of Tu Hi Re, which I play with my mom quite
Oh,
a
wow.
lot.
Oh, lovely, beautiful. Do that. Lovely.
Wow.
This was beautiful, Ambi.
Beautiful.
This was so
Fantastic.
beautiful.
Okay.
It was lovely. I can absolutely imagine like your mom and dad standing on the side. Would have been an honor for us to have them with us today, but of course, I mean, I know that they were busy, and I don't know if we managed to catch Bindu on today. I totally forgot to send her the link, but I'm not sure. But lots of love and regards to all of them. And Ambi, it was an absolute honor and pleasure to have you with us today. Today's session has been exceptionally wonderful. Like all the other sessions, I have to say, it's also like another fabulous one. And here's a lovely comment from Sunita herself.
Thank you so much. It's always amazing to hear her play, and it's great to know her.
She's fantastic. She's another person. I mean, when she touches the violin, it starts speaking on its own, it sings.
Absolutely.
So she's another one who plays magic with the violin. And so, of course, loads of wonderful comments from a lot of people. I shall share the comments with you. Thank you so much. We've gone way over time, but wonderful. Thank you, Naren, once again. So we're going to be back on next Sunday, same time, 6:30 to officially 7:15 p.m. with another amazing artist. The name we're going to announce on Wednesday. We are not telling you just now, but of course, very excited to bring the new artist here for you. And thank you, Ambi, once again. Thank you, Naren. It was a
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. And thank you to the Showcase Events team, which is Noor, Rajshri, Nena, Shohini. All of them are missing right now. Oh, wait, I think I have Noor here right now. So let me at least get her on. All the others are missing. But thank you so much, because they are the ones that actually work very hard to put it together and ensure everything works well. So thank you, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed the session as much as we enjoyed putting it together. Thank you, Naren, once again, and thank you,
Yeah.
Ambi.
Thank you so much.